The rain poured down that evening as if the heavens were crying a truth Caroline couldn't yet bear to share. She sat alone in her car in the hospital parking lot, clutching the test results as her heart shattered into a million pieces. The words terminal illness were written in the stark, cold handwriting of fate. 1 year, the doctor had said. 12 short months before the light in her world would dim forever. Her life, a life she cherished deeply, was about to change forever. Caroline Lawrence was no ordinary woman. She was a wife, a mother, and a doctor. She was the glue that held her family together, the kind and tireless healer to her many patients, and the warm, loving woman who managed to balance her career and family with grace. Her life, though far from perfect, was beautiful. She adored her husband, Richard, who had been her rock for 15 loving years. And her children, Emma, 9, and Noah, 6, were her greatest joy. To them, she was a hero. And now, she was destined to become their heartbreak. A week passed, then 2. She told no one about her diagnosis. What would she say? That one morning, this happy world they'd built together would collapse? That she'd have to leave them behind, even though she wished for nothing more than to stay? No, she couldn't do that to them. She couldn't steal their smiles before it was necessary. And so Caroline made a promise to herself. She would spend this year giving her family an unforgettable life. She would love them harder, laugh with them louder, and create memories so solid they would never fade. But most of all, she would prepare them, silently and secretly, for a future without her. The first step of her secret plan began the following weekend. Over breakfast, she casually brought up the idea of a dream year for the family. What if we lived this year as the most amazing year we've ever had? Like an adventure, she said with a sparkle in her eyes that hid her sorrow. We'd spend more time together, go places we've always talked about, and just enjoy life. What do you think? Richard looked intrigued. Emma was already excited, and Noah started jumping in his chair. Disneyland, he shouted. Caroline laughed, though, in her heart, pain ripped through her. If only they knew why this mattered so much to her. Day by day, she carefully orchestrated her plan. Caroline's phone became filled with photos documenting their laughter on sunny beaches, their adventures hiking up breathtaking mountains, and the afternoons spent baking messy, flour-strewn cakes in the kitchen. But there was more to her mission than simply making memories. Quietly, she began instilling lessons for the future. She started teaching Emma how to braid her hair and showing Noah how to fix small things around the house. She whispered advice into their sleepy ears at bedtime that they wouldn't understand now, but might remember later when they needed it most. And then there was Richard. God, how she loved that man. Late at night, as he slept peacefully by her side, tears spilled silently down her cheeks. How could she leave him? How could she love him more in the little time she had left than she already did? Often, she'd just watch him, memorizing the way his chest rose and fell, the way his fingers twitched as he dreamed. She started writing him letters, hundreds of them, for every moment she would miss. Letters for their anniversaries, for his birthdays, for the nights he couldn't sleep because he missed her. These letters became her way of ensuring he wouldn't feel alone even after she was gone. But as the months rolled by, Caroline struggled with moments of overwhelming guilt. The secret grew heavier. The laughter grew brighter, but in the quiet moments, when no one was looking, she felt the weight of the truth crushing her. One evening, after a long day at work, Richard found her on the porch, staring off into the sunset. "You've seemed different lately," he said, sitting beside her. "Not bad, just like you're trying to soak everything in. Is everything all right?" Caroline forced a smile, her heart breaking again. "I'm fine, Richard. I've just been thinking how lucky we are, you know? I don't want us to waste a second of this beautiful life." Richard took her hand. "We won't, Caroline. We never will." As Caroline entered the final months of her journey, her illness began to creep in like an uninvited shadow. Her body betrayed her in subtle yet undeniable ways, exhaustion she couldn't shake, a faint limp she couldn't hide, moments of breathlessness when climbing the stairs to kiss her kids goodnight. She pushed through the pain, masking it with relentless determination. This was her year with her family. Nothing would ruin it, not even the sickness that was quietly stealing her strength. But as much as she fought to keep the secret locked away, life had a way of unraveling even the best-laid plans. It was Emma who noticed first. One evening, as Caroline tucked her daughter into bed, Emma frowned, her big, curious eyes studying her mother closely. "Mommy," she said softly, "why do you look so tired all the time? And your hand, it shakes sometimes now. Are you okay?" Caroline swallowed hard, her throat tightening as her daughter's innocent concern pierced straight through her heart. She forced a smile and brushed Emma's hair from her face. "Oh, sweetheart, Mommy's just been working a little too hard lately. But I promise I'm okay." Emma wasn't convinced, but she nodded and lay back down. Caroline kissed her daughter's forehead and left the room, but for the first time, she felt the walls of her secret start to crack. A few weeks later, it was Richard who finally confronted her. It was late, the kids were asleep, and they were folding laundry together in their bedroom when he turned to her with a serious look in his eyes. "Caroline," he began cautiously, "I need you to tell me the truth. You've been different. The way you wince when you think no one's looking, the way you avoid certain foods now, the way you're always so tired. I can see it. Something's wrong. Please, don't shut me out." She froze, the shirt she was folding slipping from her hands. She had prepared for this moment in theory, but now, faced with her husband's loving and worried gaze, she realized just how unprepared she truly was. He deserved the truth. They all did, but she couldn't bear to see their hearts break. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she shook her head. "Richard, Her voice faltered. She couldn't bring herself to say it outright. She looked away, staring down at her shaking hands. "I didn't want to tell you. I didn't want to hurt you." Richard stepped closer, his voice gentle but firm. "Caroline, I need you to tell me. Whatever it is, we'll face it together. We always have." It was in that moment that Caroline broke. The dam holding back months of anguish, fear, and love gave way, and she crumbled into his arms, sobbing. Between gasping breaths, she whispered the truth. "I'm sick, Richard. I'm terminal. The doctors, they gave me a year. That was nearly 8 months ago." For a long moment, there was only silence. She finally looked up to see tears streaming down Richard's face, his expression a mix of devastation and determination. He held her face in his hands, looking at her as though trying to memorize every detail. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Why did you carry this alone?" "Because I didn't want to take this year from you," she admitted, her voice trembling. I wanted it to be full of happiness, not sadness. I wanted you and the kids to have the best year of your lives, not one filled with worry and pain." Richard pulled her close, holding her tightly as though he could shield her from everything, from the illness, from the pain, from time itself. "Caroline," he whispered fiercely, "you don't have to protect us from this. We're your family. We'll face this together, every step of the way." The days that followed were an emotional upheaval. Caroline finally opened up to her children in a way that was tender and age-appropriate. She explained that Mommy wasn't feeling well, and though she'd have to rest more, she still wanted every moment with them to count. There were tears, many of them, but there was also an incredible outpouring of love. They held each other closer, laughed harder, and clung to the time they had left. Richard became her greatest source of strength. He stood by her through every difficult day, helping her navigate both the physical tolls of her illness and the emotional weight of saying goodbye. Together, they created moments that would stay with their children forever. A family camping trip under the stars, a heartfelt video diary from Caroline for milestones her children would one day reach, and quiet, precious nights spent cuddled together, whispering "I love you," like it was a mantra that could conquer time. And when the end finally came, Caroline was at peace, surrounded by the people she loved most. She left behind a family who, though heartbroken, knew they had been deeply and fiercely loved. Richard found her letters in the days that followed, each one a guiding light for him and the children in the years to come. Caroline's absence left an ache that would never fully heal, but her presence lingered in every part of their lives, in the laughter of her children as they recounted the stories of their dream year, in Richard's strength as he continued to guide their family forward, and in the quiet moments when they'd feel her love like the warmth of sunlight breaking through the clouds. The letters she had written became treasures, waiting for the right moments to remind her family that she'd never truly left them. For Emma's first heartbreak, there was a letter filled with stories of Caroline's awkward teenage years and a reminder that pain always paves the way for healing. For Noah's graduation, there was a letter bursting with pride and encouragement, urging him to reach for the stars. And for Richard, on each of their wedding anniversaries, some letters poured her love across time, reminding him that love, even in its absence, could still be eternal. As the seasons changed and life carried them forward, the family learned to live with both sorrow and joy, understanding that one could not exist without the other. They built a life that honored her, carrying her lessons, her laughter, and her deep compassion into the world around them. Richard would often sit with the kids, now growing into young adults, and recount stories of their mother's humor, her brilliance, and her capacity for endless love. Caroline's presence, though unseen, remained unshakably real. The greatest lesson they learned from Caroline's life, her love, and her final year was this: life is fleeting, but love is eternal. Every moment matters, not because it is perfect, but because it is shared. The small things, the bedtime hugs, the silly jokes, the whispered words of encouragement, are the things that endure, stronger than time, more powerful than loss. Caroline taught them to embrace life's imperfections, to treasure the people around them, and to create a legacy by touching hearts wherever they went. Her illness, while cruel and uninvited, had gifted them a clarity that remained with them forever. In her absence, Emma grew into a kind and compassionate young woman, inspired by her mother's legacy to study medicine and care for others just as Caroline had. Noah, full of curiosity and wonder, became an engineer, embarking on adventures around the world, but always carrying his mother's wisdom in his heart. And Richard, though he never stopped missing his wife, found peace in knowing that their love had created something that could never be broken, a family built on trust, resilience, and the knowledge that their mother's love burned brighter than any darkness they'd ever face. Years later, on what would have been Caroline's 50th birthday, the three of them, Richard, Emma, and Noah, gathered at her favorite spot in the garden. They sat together beneath the large oak tree, sipping tea and sharing stories about her. They laughed, they cried, and they marveled at the vibrant life she had lived, even in her final days. "She taught us how to live," Emma said softly, gazing up at the sky. Noah nodded, a gentle smile on his face. "And she showed us how to love, even when life isn't easy." Richard placed a hand on both their shoulders, his voice filled with quiet emotion. "She gave us everything, and her love is still with us in everything we do." As they sat together under the tree, the wind picked up, rustling the leaves gently, almost like a whisper. It carried with it the unmistakable feeling that, even now, Caroline was there, watching over them with the same love she'd always had. And they knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that no one is ever truly gone, as long as they've loved deeply and left their heartprints on the people they held closest. Caroline had taught them to live fully, love endlessly, and carry hope, even after goodbye. And in doing so, she remained a part of them forever. A life well lived is never forgotten, and a heart that gives love never truly leaves. That became her family story and her greatest legacy. Thanks for watching. If this story has inspired you, subscribe, like, and share it.